Oh, well, at least it's not internet life and everything, or we'd be in all sorts of trouble.
Not a lockdown life, not for me.
Okay, Holly, well, thank you so much. You were on my podcast predecessor, which was Slouching Towards Masculinity, but today it's an all new thing. It's cinema life and everything. So thank you for being here. How are you today?
Yeah, great. I'm good, thank you. Excited to have a chat. It's nice to be on again. Thanks for having me back.
Wonderful. Well, can you hear me okay, just out of interest?
Yeah, all good. We're on.
Right. Okay, so I was just going to say, well, would you like? I know I say it's normally 3 films, and we may get to the 4th, but because there were such 4 good choices, would you like to say your 4 choice of films? Well, technically 5, isn't it?
So I'll try and keep them to 3. The Father is my first one. The Notebook's the second, and I'm going to go for The Hunger Games as the third.
Oh, okay.
If you did want to put a 4th in there, it would be The Whale, just because it's current, you know.
Yeah.
They're my main 4, which if you look at them, they're all quite depressing. So I don't know what that says about me. They're great films. They're great movies.
Yes. Well, I think for the depression, there are moments of joy in them as well, and hope, and sort of struggle. But where would you like to start with? Would you like to start with The Father? Start at the beginning?
Yeah, The Father.
Well, go on then, please. So what brings you to The Father? I mean, obviously an amazing performance and stuff by the whole cast, but yeah, what spoke to you about it? What did the film speak to you about?
So it was actually recommended to me by a friend and a director. We were talking about amazing films, and he was like, "Watch The Father," and I was like, "Okay, yeah, like I'll watch it." Eventually, got around to watching it, and for me, it's the way the story's told. I've not seen a film like that in a while, where I genuinely was like mesmerized by the storytelling. I think now we've got so much amazing like technology, and the films can become a massive visual and incredible cinematography, blah blah blah. But obviously, the main thing, especially for me, is the storytelling in it.
Yes.
And the way the father, the way it tells a story and the narrative. If you haven't seen it already, it's told from Anthony Hopkins, the lead. It's told from his point of view. About a guy with dementia, and my granddad actually has dementia, and it was interesting because I've not seen a film do it in that way before. So from beginning to end, you're on the journey with him, and you kind of have it from his point of view, which really makes you think about actually not only what they go through, but understanding it from the family's point of view and how confusing it can all be. So yeah, for me, it was just the storytelling. It's amazing.
I think for me as well, the unreliable narrator. I'm always interested when the usual thing is you can trust the main character or trust what the film is telling you is true, but then when obviously the breaks in his mental faculties start to establish themselves in the film, and it makes you, like I say, it was a very unique way of putting yourself in Anthony Hopkins' mind, but all at the same time, the acting was so incredible as well. It blended all together. I was very much taken that I've not seen a film like that in a long time that was so sort of spellbinding and so affecting as well afterwards, that you realise, not just through the acting, you realise through the way the film was set up, how much you were putting into his sort of mind and his predicament.
Yeah, exactly. And like from the beginning, when obviously the things start to kind of not make sense a little bit, you're like, what? Like, what's going on? And you realize, and then you start to get frustrated with him because you know this is actually what he's experienced. And it really does make you think how difficult it would be. But like you say, I mean, the acting's in it is also phenomenal. Like, you know, Anthony Hopkins is incredible, and Olivia Colman. And yeah, the whole thing is just told so respectful to what's the truth about it, about the disease.
Yes.
The way it really does play with your mind. So I agree with you, being put in the unpredictability of, like you say, the lead character normally knows where you're going, whereas in this you don't know what's real or not, so you just go with it, and you're really just mesmerized for the whole thing.
I think one of the other things, and I don't know if you agree with this, but one of the things that really spoke to me about the film as well was you don't feel like you're being lectured to. You're not told to how to feel in any particular way as well. I just think that's some of the beauty of the art of it, that you can just, you're stuck in the midst of it, and it's like you say, you feel frustrated and saddened, and then hoping that there might be some respite to it, and he might be able to sort of get some of his sense of himself back again. But just that that slow erosion, but at the same time you're confused and angry and stuff as well. So it really, all these different emotions, but there's no particular musical cue or sense that, okay, this is how you must feel now. You don't feel led.
So true. I hadn't actually thought about that. Like the fact that it's unopinionated, like it just tells you the facts of the story. There's no like you say, and now we're gonna feel sad, and there's a sad song on, and you're made to think that. You're right. It's literally just the raw story, and then you decide how you feel about that as you go through. Yeah, that's fascinating. I never thought about it like that.
No, but just I say the power of the storytelling, it's, yeah, I have to recommend that highly. As you said, not a laugh riot, but then again, sometimes, you know, art shouldn't be safe, and sometimes you are going to feel it a little bit, and it's nice to be able to see cinema where you can just walk out and go, yeah, that was fun. And there's other stuff that deeply affects you, and like, you're like, okay, that's going to stick with me for days now. But both equally valid, I believe.
It's also like you say, the beautiful moments of it, as sad as some parts of it are. You've got to have that to be able to then, like you say, appreciate the moments of like the special moments between the family members and like the ending. And you have to have, I think, that variety to then really appreciate those special moments which are caught on camera like that. And yeah, it is sad, but like you say, it's got to have that special moments, and the beauty comes from being able to have both sides of emotion. So yeah.
I think, I don't know if you agree with this as well, but if it's something that's just relentlessly happy, if there's no struggle in it, then it will lift your spirits. But then it's gone, because like your brain needs to see some struggle. And similarly, if it's a film that's just relentless on the downbeat, then you, after about 20 minutes, you're probably like, oh, I think I've had enough of this now. So
Yeah.
you do need the balance, you need the struggle. And the one thing I really got from Hopkins' character was how he was desperately trying to hold on to those moments. And, you know, like you say, the way the family were dealing with it and how they were trying to care for him, and just his confusion and not, it was there has to be something worth fighting for. There has to be something worth struggling for. You have to see the joy. Otherwise, if it's just relentless depression, it's like, well,
Yeah.
what are we fighting for? What are we watching this for? Because it's just going to be more sadness.
And real life is like that, right? So if you're going to try and show and tell stories which are authentic and real, I think you have to, like you say, have some kind of arc or some kind of moral or something to aim for in order for the story to feel organic and real. So that's what happens in life.
Yeah, 110%. Completely agree with that. So should we go on to the next one then? What's the next one?
Yeah. The
we can always go back and forth.
Exactly. The Notebook.
Ah.
It's similar in the fact that it's got the sadness and the joy. One of the things I do love the style in the era, and I love Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling obviously are like, well, Rachel McAdams is my girl crush, first of all. I think she's amazing in everything she does. But the film again goes through the relationships, the love, and the arc of that. So not only just like your everyday life, but going from the love story of being young and seeing that joy and the innocence to it. And then even though Rachel McAdams keeps that character throughout, you know, she's very naive in some senses, and you kind of endearing because of that. But then at the end, obviously with the arguments, and then it towards being old age and seeing that journey, I think is just it's magic.
Yes. I mean, obviously spoilers here as well, but I've just obviously realised the major link in between the ending of the Notebook and how that ties into the father really well.
Yeah,
I don't know why that didn't just occur to me today.
I know, I must really like these films. Very similar.
But again, the strength and the power and wanting to remember the love, and also the people that are left behind, and wanting that person to still exist in their lives, even though if they're physically there, mentally they might not be there anymore, but that hope beyond hope that they can sort of come back and, you know, have those memories, the power of memory, I guess, as well, and the power of love and stuff as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite like pastimes and things to do is actually at the end of like the day or whatever, I'll sit through my photo gallery, and it's a habit I've had for quite a long time, but it gives you that feeling of like reflection. And even if it's just like, because sometimes you forget what you've done in your day or what you've done in your week, but like you say, the power of memory and reflection, I think, gives you perspective. And like when they're together in their old age at the end of the story, and they have this whole book of their life and story, and the way to bring her back is to recall those memories. I think that's like huge. The perspective that can give you as well through hard times and stuff is it gives you, like I say, that perspective. So I love it.
I think that this word is so overused now, but it's the mindfulness as well. Like you say, taking that time each day. So many people are just like, and now what next? And what have I got to do? And what's the next future thing? But both these films go, well, if the power of maybe what's gone on before and what next is both taken away from you, then it really is just what now, what can I, and you know, actually appreciating the beauty of now and actually finding some sort of joy in it as well. And if you know, I'm realizing the power of that as well, having that ability just to be able to think and be able to remember. And if it's taken away from you, how much, you know, feeling that people are in a sad point, but at least you have that. And if that you don't appreciate it until it's gone, so it's good, like you do, just appreciating it now by, oh well, actually, what did I do today? Not just worrying about what's next.
Yeah, my grandma actually always says that to me about like obviously living in the present, but by that it just means like don't get so carried away about what's next all the time that you do, like you say, miss what's happening right now. And yeah, the Notebook is just a beautiful way of going through those memories, and because we get to experience them with them, we can see how special it is to them. And I think obviously when someone tells you about their memory, obviously, you know, you can enjoy it for them. But then when you see someone's story, I think you feel like you generally have been through that journey with them. And like you said, without any foresight, you don't know what's necessarily going to happen if they're going to stay together. But then because at the end it ties it in, it's just beautiful.
No, it is. I must admit, when you put that up as one of your choices, I had to watch it again, and I was like, I got it as one of those. You know, you get like 3 films on a DVD, and I was like, oh, I'll put it on. It was the one of the third one. It wasn't sort of wasn't. I'll give it a watch, and I was just like, this is years ago now, and I was just like, oof, it sneaks up on you. I thought it was just going to be like a romantic comedy, and it was a really weird package. It was like a Matthew McConaughey rom-com. And then another romantic comedy, Just Friends with Ryan Reynolds, and then they put the Notebook on it, and I was like, that's a bit of
a nice mix.
Yeah, you didn't prepare me there at all, DVD. You dropped that on me big time.
I miss those times, man. Getting the shop and buying, because you also went those days when you went to go and buy a film, you didn't know like what it was about. You didn't see the trailer half the time. It was like you just go from the cover of the video, you know, and it was just a risk if it was good or not, and you'd spend your Friday night watching it, and that was that.
It's fun. Oh no, there's a big thing about for me and DVDs at the moment as well, because I was watching the film the other week online on streaming, and I was having a sort of almost is my memory still correct, because there was an edit in a scene and they hadn't have made the point that it had been edited, so I actually went and found it online and was like, oh yeah, they have edited that scene. But yeah, they started. So very important if you do own physical media to keep hold of it, because edits can be made into films now. And it wasn't even a particularly dodgy scene. It was just a bit of swearing, but I was just like, wow, okay, they've changed that now. So yeah, that's sort of been lost forever. So yeah, interesting to point that one out.
Yeah, good point. I never thought about that. I suppose nowadays, like you say, everything's online, isn't it? Films and TV, and you know, it's actually quite nice, I think, back then to be able to go and have that physical copy. I do somewhere have a box of videotapes, like I don't want to get rid of them. They're still in my house.
I did one of those things where I was it's like the future, I can get rid of all my DVDs now, and then have slowly over the last couple of years been getting low, but they're cheap, they're all, and it's just interesting that if something for whatever reason is bought by a major streaming service but they choose not to put it on or take it off service, then there is no way, unless you're going slightly nefarious means, to actually find that anywhere. And I find that quite sad, that you should be able to go and view art anywhere. You should, and when you want it, and also lend it to people. And if you lose that power, even though it's convenient to have everything online, I think it's just to physically own it as well.
I actually also don't know how I feel about being able to have that like service to get rid of the scenes, because if someone who's written a story or a production have created something, they've obviously put those scenes in for a reason, and obviously times change, things change, people change. So I guess, you know, that's all that evolution is always going to happen. But I actually had this conversation with my boyfriend last night as well about, as an actor, doing kind of classical scenes, and how much truth do you still play in it for what it was back then, or do you bring it forward? So actually it's a good point. Like you say, times change, people change, things evolve. Do you pay respect to what it was originally, or do you think the writer and production team kind of give you that freedom to be able to kind of change it up or take bits out and rearrange things, or even rewrite the story in a different way, I guess?
That's an amazing point, actually, because we see so much stuff now, like old stories that are being reimagined in a present setting. And then, as you say, sometimes the language and the sensibilities change because it's being written by a present day writer with their sort of opinions. But I don't know, this is just my feel. It's like if you're playing a character, you've always got your education, your views, you're at this present moment, and they can inform what you're playing. And I think they will always imprint slightly on what you're playing. But I don't know, I like, if something, even if the opinions have changed vastly and I don't agree with them, if it's of its time, that's an important distinction to make. I personally don't feel you need to reimagine it in present day, because there's lots of present day stuff going on already. It's important to learn the lessons of the past, otherwise you're sort of doomed to repeat them. I mean, how do you feel about that when you play a character and stuff?
The same, actually, in terms of like, we have to respect what's been, I think, and then you can actually see the journey as to where we've come today, right? And so within every kind of like period and genre, obviously it'll be different anyway, because some things might change loads and other things might not, and maybe some things have stayed quite similar throughout. The other day I was thinking about the filmmaking process. It's actually, like, I was looking back and it hasn't really, obviously, in the last however many years, hasn't changed as much as you'd think, considering how much technology's improved. Like the actual process, I mean, obviously, you know, the lenses and everything else, whatever. But in terms of the actual like process and crew, I was actually fascinated by that. Hasn't really changed much, which means they really nailed it back then.
Yeah.
Obviously, in terms of story, I agree with you that I think things should pay respect to how it's been, and then, like you say, inform those characters or choices perhaps as we know and what we know today, as you go through. But it's a really difficult grey area, I think. Actor, how much responsibility you have to make those decisions.
I also think as well that that's part of the big thing of acting for me as well. It's like, I like to place myself back into those characters. I mean, God knows I'm grateful for the roles I've had recently, but you know, a lot of Cockney wide boys and a lot of horrible just swearing and screaming at women and children. But I don't, that's not me, honest. But like, you put yourselves into those characters, and you sort of, through the process of developing the character, you start to understand, even if you don't agree with you, understand and appreciate and learn from those mindsets. You know, it's almost like, I always say, I'm going to go and take a horrible holiday now, because it's sort of like, I put myself in the box and out comes this guy or whoever, this human that I don't agree with, but it's like, I get to travel in him for a while, and I'm like, yeah, all right, but you get a greater understanding. I think, you know, some old historical stuff might have been better, some probably usually is worse, so it wouldn't be in history. But it's finding those lessons. But I think you need to teach those lessons first of all.
Yeah, and as an actor, like, your job is to tell a story. So who's to say what's a right story to tell and what's a wrong story, I guess. And the whole idea of perhaps going to the cinema and then coming away after is that you have that chat or you have a conversation and you think about it. And I think it would be very tricky to start kind of narrowing down what was allowed to be, that, you know, what stories could be told and what not, for example. Now I've just thought of loads of other films that I'm thinking would have been great to talk. But it's true, like, as an actor, I suppose you have a responsibility to tell the story in the best way possible. And, you know, and if there are talking points from it, I think that's a good thing.
I think as well, for me, it's almost, if you're having a conversation with somebody and having that fear of offence, or taking it too emotionally. And when you're developing a character, or like you watch a film, you might completely disagree with it, but you can have that conversation with someone and go, okay, we agree to disagree on this, but at least we are both honest and open and not afraid of offence. You can reach that common understanding of difference of opinion. And I think that's the importance of, like, film and censorship and stuff as well, that you can watch it and you go, okay, I don't agree with anything that's gone on camera now, but I can take that away with me and I can have a discussion with someone. It might be their favorite film, and you get to learn more about each other from the way you are viewing the work, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of way I sort of feel about it. I think it's so important to have those conversations. I get afraid if certain films or certain pieces of art are removed, so you don't get to even have those conversations because it's been done for your best interest. And I'm always scared about things that are sort of done for my best interest if I haven't had a say in it myself. I have the right, I can go and see a film, I have the right to walk out of the cinema. I would hate to find the fact that I'm not allowed to go and see that film.
Yeah, exactly. And within a story, there always will be a range of characters with different opinions, with different things. That's what makes a story interesting as well, right? Like those arcs, seeing the disagreements of characters, seeing the agreements and the changes, and perhaps other characters can help. You know, that's what storytelling is as well. So I think within those characters, you're always going to have different personalities, different things, which is what makes it interesting, which is why we go and watch stuff and have an opinion. And there's always goodies and baddies, even through history, right? Like superheroes and villains, there's always going to be that juxtaposition. So that's important as well.
Well, if it's all about the conflict and the struggle at the end of the day. If as you mentioned early on, the character's arc and a narrative arc, if people start amazing and end amazing, there's no struggle in the middle, it's going to be just quite a lame film. Really. It's like everything's meant to. So it's like you've and I do you agree with this as well, that when you're in a character, you have to find that arc in them as well, because if you just play it one note all the way through, okay, you can do it, but it's like, but where's the light and shade? Where's the conflict? Where, even if there's where's my own internal struggle? What's my motivations to do this? Otherwise, it's just like meh, and with nothing in between.
Yeah, I can't remember what actor it was. It might have been Matthew McConaughey. It was someone recently saying about like the inner monologue of even without having lines and that whole process of, you know, if you're in a scene and you're not speaking, there's always something going on. Oh, was it Christian Bale? It might have been Christian Bale.
It could have been Christian, but I think yes, it was Christian Bale, because he was talking about the pale blue eye, wasn't he? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And how, like, even though he's not saying anything lines wise, he's got an inner monologue the whole time that he's written out, that he knows what he's saying, what he's thinking, what's going to happen next, like having that constant narrative in his own head so that we read that as the audience. That's got to be vital as well, right? Even if you're not speaking.
Well, I forget what it is, but there's that model of like when you're talking to somebody, it's like 67% is, 10% is, and I know the smallest amount is actually what you're saying. Everything else is what you're looking like, what your body language is doing. So I think if it's something that's done well in a film, precisely, you don't really notice it. But if someone just is unless it's their character to be very still and like expressionless, you pick up on it really quickly. It's like everybody's always moving, even if they're just listening, everyone's sort of nodding in agreement, shoulders. And I think that's such an important skill to master, that if you are telling a story, it has to look three-dimensional and fully realized, and not just sort of like stock still with like blank expression, you know?
Yeah, and it's amazing how much the audience pick up on things without having to really forcefully tell them or show them.
Yes.
We're so intelligent as humans to be able to look at people and look at their body language and the way they speak without having to constantly be like, okay, now they feel this, are they feeling that? And sometimes it's quite nice when there's a bit of uncertainty with how they're feeling. You're like, oh, where's this going to go?
Yeah.
So I think actually as an actor as well, you have to trust the audience sometimes to not, and trust the writing to not have to feel like you have to force anything or show any emotion. It's different to that. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, and just sometimes it's the withholding of the emotion that becomes so authentic. You know, it's like, okay, I feel sad here, but in real life, if you actually feel sad, how much do you actually break down and stuff, or how much is it just holding it inwards? Here's another one. Denzel Washington goes, if you cry, you stop the audience from crying. He goes, if you stop yourself from crying, then you allow the audience to fill in that emotion for you. And that always stuck with me as well, because can't fault Denzel.
No, it's true. It's right. Actually, it's more painful to watch, like you say, the struggle, the holding back of something in a situation, which actually we do a lot of as humans anyway. You know, we don't instantly go to these places straight away that we see in a script, perhaps. Like there's a build up behind it. There's a reason to get to that point. And there's nothing more sad than watching someone try not to cry.
We're at the end of the Notebook as well now. If that had just been like then I would have been like, that was my impression of someone crying, by the way. In case you're not watching it on YouTube. It would have probably been affecting, but it's just that dignity at the end. I'm just like, oof, exactly.
Someone trying to be strong, trying to hold it together. It's that attempt, I think, that makes us feel that pain.
That's the connection, that's the authenticity, that we can see that in people. Okay, there is a freedom in being able to express emotions, but so much of our life is about, is this the right time and place to do it, you know? And also as well, I guess, because you're looking at them up on screen, a lot of the time we're dealing with cinema, you're getting to sit in a darkened room, which is always great because no one can see.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the dark.
Like me watching Puss in Boots the other day for some reason.
I love it. I need to see it. Was it good?
It's very sad.
Everyone said it's amazing.
It's incredible. Any children's cartoon that can get away with a Nicolas Cage Wicker Man reference is good for me. And Florence Pugh's in it again, so she's like showing up and I think, yeah, no, highly recommend. Yeah,
she's busy gal.
It's like there's another, and when I was watching that, there was a post of another film that she's in soon, directed by Zach Braff. I mean, incredible. We talk about someone, sorry, we've jumped off your films a bit here, but you talk about someone who's capable of micro acting and capable of withholding emotion, but you know everything that's going on in what she does is the reason she's doing what she's doing at the moment.
Good for her.
Yeah, 100%. Go on then, third film, let's give it a go.
I'm gonna go with, I'll say Hunger Games first of
all three.
The first.
You sort of have the right.
First and most. I actually read the books at school before the films came out, and again, someone just recommended me the book. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I'm not a massive book reader, but I'll read it, and I literally couldn't put it down. I love action, as we know, like action and adventure, and I think having a sense of adventure through a book is so special. And then when you see that brought to life in a movie, like when I went to watch Hunger Games in the cinema, I was like, wow. Normally films struggle to be as good as the book, but for me, the film is as good as the book.
They did it justice completely. Yeah,
and obviously Jennifer Lawrence, I love her, and her subtlety when she acts, especially in such like life and death situations. I think, I just love her. I think the story's brilliant. There's so much journey. Like adventure films are brilliant at showing literally every bit of the journey, right? You're on that journey with them through every moment. And yeah, I love it. I love the Hunger Games.
Just again, coming from a young adult novel, but her Jennifer Lawrence's ability to tell such or display such nuanced emotions, again, that withholding, trying to be strong for her sister and stuff like that, but then fear, and you know the way she sort of paraded as this symbol of hope. And you know, that's one thing that really stuck with me, that she becomes this symbol of hope and freedom, and she doesn't want to be it. And that's so awesome, like the hero's journey, being given the mantle and going, no, at first I don't feel worthy of it, and then secondly, I'm broken, I don't want this. And yeah, an absolutely phenomenal film.
And that actually links in as well what we were saying about like the holding back and holding in. Her as a character, she does that not only because she doesn't want to show that emotion, she does it for her sister, like you say, and she does it for her mum, and she tries to put on this strong, brave kind of body and face through everything. All Hunger Games 1, Catching Fire, all of them, she tries to keep that calm, brave face, but in the inside, obviously, she's having to deal with so many different things coming at her from different sides, physically, emotionally, her family. There's a lot going on, yet she seems to have this kind of like nothing happening in a weird way.
I think probably one of the big things for me as well, even as they got more popular, they stayed true to the novels. They didn't make any massive changes. The only thing I think I truly remember was in the first one where they actually lightened up on the violence somewhat. It wasn't as violent as it might have been, but they never let the effects override the story and the human emotions, and those little moments of her love with her boyfriend, or Woody Harrelson's character, or even Lenny Kravitz's character and stuff as well. You still got those, and Julianne Moore, you still get these amazing moments of emotion and feeling. It didn't just become about the effects or the battles. It was always about what these characters are feeling and going through became first.
And I know we both love obviously action stuff, and there's such an amazing thing to go watch in the cinema where you just see all this action and drama and excitement and you feel that on edge. But when there's a story that's
Oh yeah,
like written out like this, come from a book and then been translated onto screen, like you say, it would be a shame to then lose the story to a nice visual. I think it's so much deeper than that. And I actually thought this about Avatar as well. What's the new Avatar? I know, again, this is going off my films, but
no, it's all right. It's about film. I like it.
Avatar obviously is an incredible visual, but I think they're really good at still keeping in little morals and storylines that link up at the end. And there's so many things. It's not just about how incredibly, oh, that's a nice, visual. It is about the story, which I think we can't lose in the film world. I think it has to stay true to storylines and emotion and life. And I was actually saying again to my boyfriend recently about AI. Someone mentioned like writing they could write short films.
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
And I really, I don't know how I feel about this, because for me, storytelling and movies and films and everything is to do with human connection, human emotion, about someone creating this in their head with their past experiences or with something a world that they've created. I think when that's taken out of your hands and given to kind of a robot in a weird way, I don't know whether we're going to lose that sense of like humanity.
I find that's an amazing question. Wow.
That's deep.
Yeah, that went full on. That went from Avatar as well. I was gonna say, I think for me that's because I remember one of my acting friends actually got in contact with me after watching Avatar, and the level of facial expressions and stuff they can do now, and he was like, right, that's it, we're all out of a job soon. And I was like, it's like when people were looking at paintings and then one day the moving picture come in like a zoetrope and they're like, that's it, no more painting, painting's done. There are different ways of expressing art, and I've listened to some of the music that has been made by computer recently where they'll get like a dead artist and just recreate their voice and use all the other songs to make a new song. And it's sort of there. Maybe in time it becomes even more like perfect. But this is a big sort of retort back, like, can the whole of human existence be reduced to an algorithm?
Yeah.
It's like I think you can get something that can study, and the way computers are going now, they can study every script ever and create this perfect script, but there'll be something in the perfection that's imperfect because the human needs that imperfection,
And for us, that's what makes, I think, stories relatable and why we enjoy watching them so much. And I think that's such an important part of it is how you make the audience feel. Like, it's not just about making, like you say, the perfect story. There's so much more to it than that. It's the relationships with people, the journey that you can see someone's life go on, or like there's so many films as well that are based on a true story that I'm like, you just wouldn't be able to write that. It's so imperfect that it is actually incredible. Like, you wouldn't think it's real. So I think to then take that out of our hands and just make something based on all the knowledge from other things, I'm not sure about it. I really do think that it should stay within humans.
I still think there has to be, I agree, and I still think there has to be at some point a human to set it in motion, even if you're just giving the computer a couple of keywords to get the sort of understanding you want. It's like when I've been watching, I've been playing quite a few video games in lockdown, and is playing like The Last of Us and stuff, and the depth of the facial expressions on it, and watching the live action version as well, they're equally good. Like there's no better or worse, there's no judgment there. They have the same characters but played differently. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to the human experience. Even the video game is acted by humans and then digitized and written by a human. You have to keep the humanity there, otherwise you lose that, like you say, that sense of emotional connection. It's just not the same.
Yeah, and I suppose art is all of those things, and could be digital. It could be, there's so many different types of art, but it's whether or not for me, I maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe as well, I to see it and understand it and be like, wow, no human could even create that. But I think art to me is a little bit more personable, relatable, and a bit more gritty. Like it should be imperfect.
Yeah, completely. And I feel like that's even in this when you're acting, you're almost seeking for this perfect character that you feel completely realized and encompassed in it, and every decision you make is the one that the character would. But it's that constant mindfulness and being in the moment and bringing yourself back into it. It's that struggle. It's that ability to go, and also an understanding that we were talking about films that might be changed, or putting yourself into an historical character. They're imperfect. Everything's imperfect. Everybody has their moments of doubt, or you have to learn. If you are just born fully realized with all your opinions set in stone, and everyone around you just agrees with you for your whole life, it's a very comforted, and there's no struggle, there's no learning. And ultimately we sort in a way seek a struggle, seek learning, because through that you measure progress. You need to see a progression of life.
Exactly. I think as well, I was on set recently talking to someone who is a writer, and I was like, where do you start writing? Like, I'm trying to write a short film at the moment. I'm trying to, write more so that I can understand characters better. And I was asking, I was like, where do you start? And he was like, to be honest with you, you just got to, it sounds really simple, but you just got to write. Like, there isn't really, like, obviously there's things that you need in the story, but I think that comes from experience and reading it back and writing it. If you start copying particularly any kind of structure or format, then you lose your originality as a writer. So there's also that element of, coming from a writer's background, maybe you need that freedom of writing however you like, rather than following any structure, plan, or perfect way to write.
Yeah, and you know what, I don't know if you agree with this, but I've sort of got that through acting as well. That there's all these systems, all these methods, but then ultimately I feel that you can, if you just learn from one method and just stick to one way of doing things, it can work really, really well. But then you're ultimately learning through someone else's learning. Whereas if you can sometimes take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, it's a bit like fitness training as well. Eventually you come up with something that's unique to you, and you can operate and understand. And I think it is just exactly what you mentioned there, just doing and having the courage to fail, but having the courage to be curious. If everything is laid out and set out for you, and A equals B equals C, then where is that joy in learning, and almost that joy in making mistakes? Because there's, again, no sense of progression. You're just following something on rails.
Exactly. And with the acting process, with that sort of thing, I think you're right. There isn't one way of doing it or being. And I know that can be quite frustrating as well. Like within the industry, if you see perhaps someone doing it less for less time than you, or someone who hasn't been going to class, or I know we're talking with friends as well, like people can get frustrated with that, especially with social media now, you see everyone's success. So it's that thing of that you see someone else's process, and because it's different to yours, you either say theirs is better or question yours if you're things. But actually, like you just said, there isn't one way of acting. Is you are Philip, you take your things that you've learned from different people, different things, and you learn differently anyway, so you can kind of create your own process in a weird way, which is amazing.
And I just feel as well, it's like what you said there, where in social media there's such this thing of like, oh God, how they got that? And or when you sometimes meet people and they're like, oh, that was my idea, or that should have been mine. And I was in the ice bath the other day and had a big old think about it. And it's like there's that the idea that it's yours is actually, it doesn't, it's not, it's ephemeral, it's there and it's gone. And there'll be other things. So if you see someone who's successful, that was always their sort of path in my sort of mind. It's just they have done something in their life that you can go, oh, okay, and you can sort of look at their process and go, oh, that's how they did it. But even if you've copied it exactly, it wouldn't, you're a different person, so it wouldn't exactly give you that same answer. So I think it's important just to be like, for me anyway, just like, well, you got that, good on you. You're happy, you've publicized it, you spoke out. It's good to be proud of yourself. But on the other side, I won't accept negativity from that, or bitterness or envy, because it's like, well done on your journey, you're doing it. That's how it shows that anyone can do it.
It's the inspiration. That's what we should have, the drive. You see someone else do something, you're like, art is that as well. Art is, you take a bit here, you take a bit there. So if anything, you, like you say, you can learn from it and take that on. And you even see this amongst like celebrity actors or like famous actors, Hollywood actresses. You see their interviews and they all say different things. Like someone like the Joker, for example, like he locked himself away for 6 weeks or whatever was in his hotel room, right? To find his laugh, the Joker's laugh, and that's incredible. And you're like, oh man, I didn't do that for my script for class on Thursday. There's so many different elements and variables with everything, and someone else has never trained and booked, and you see their interview and they're like, you just got to be in the moment, you don't need to do that much prep. So really, I think take all those things, try them all, and make your own way within that.
It's funny you should say that, because after watching The Joker, I actually climbed inside a fridge for one of the scenes, and it really didn't go down well because it was a children's comedy. But I'm joking.
I was going to say, no way.
Joaquin Phoenix apparently just told Todd Phillips, he said, "I'm just going to get in the fridge now." And they just, he was like, just got.
Wow.
And the bit when he stabs the guy and stops the other guy from leaving, he puts his hand on the door and he stops the little person from leaving. That was all done in the moment. It apparently, like, the actor's looking up at him and he goes, "I should be out of the door now," and he just wasn't letting him leave, but just in that moment, in the character.
That's incredible. I actually have, even from class the other day, like so many people, someone was saying about being Peaky Blinders and blah blah blah, and watching the actors work on set, there was actually quite a lot of improvisation, and that's also important, the fact that as an actor you can improvise. And there's so much more on TV recently it's been improvised. And I was at Edinburgh Fringe last year and I watched so many improvised shows, musicals and comedies. I think improv's and also another way to create something that's so obviously in the moment and so special. And I bet again in The Joker that probably happened as well throughout, having those moments of, do you mind if I just do this, and then have a go at something or play out a scene or scenario.
That is such an interesting way, and when I sort of spot commonalities and in things, that in wrestling a lot of the time, professional wrestling, you sort of have an idea of what the ending is, what the middle might be, maybe a little bit at the beginning, but then the rest is just like, well, we'll see what happens out there. And it's so funny you should say that. So I think that's where people are sort of getting the balance. I remember watching a interview with Vincent Cassel recently, and he said, "It's my job to create accidents," which he's not beating people up. But what he means is, like, he's done his research, he understands his character, but in the moment, he seeks to, like, break the idea of what you expect to happen, and then everyone just gets to react to the accident, and then you get like a trueness and an authenticity, which is sort of like, okay, you're in your character but you're still dealing with a real moment, so it becomes more authentic. And I don't know if I exactly explained that right, but like you say, just finding those moments in improv where you didn't expect that to happen, and you as a performer come up with something new in the moment, and in the audience there's just something very authentic and real in that, oh wow, this didn't go the way I expected. You become very in tune to it.
And even that process in itself, you could line up 10 of your most famous actors and actresses and get them to do that, and some of them would love it, and some of them also be like, no, and like, I've learned, like, line by line, word for word,
yes,
wants it a specific way. So again, even that is amazing, but there's still not one thing that all actors will perhaps agree on. So yeah,
I think that, and that's a really good way of putting it, that maybe that's a good way of learning lots of different styles, because if you're with a different actor or a different script writer or a different director, they may want your collaboration, but they want you to collaborate in a certain way. And if you have more tools in your toolkit, you can sort of acquiesce to each other's demands, as opposed to being stuck in that moment of like, this is my way, this is the only way I can do it, this is what you're going to get. I mean, some directors and stuff would probably like that. They want Holly to be Holly and that's the way it's going to work. But sometimes it might be, okay, can we sort of have a little bit, change the degree of how you're doing that? And then that's where those extra tools come in.
Yeah. And on set recently, I was watching the way the director was speaking to like the lead actress, and then also the stunt double, the stand-in, and like watching that relationship. And that was interesting because obviously I was seeing how much information he wanted to give to her, how much she took on board, and like where the collaboration was. Because like you say, it is different every time. So there's a part of you that you can learn and watch, blah, blah, blah. But perhaps when it's your turn one day to go and say the lines, you don't know how it's going to be. If you've not worked with a director before, you don't know how much they're going to say, okay, yeah, like that's great, and then move on, or whether they're going to be more like, no, again, like I need you to do this. It's going to be so many different ways. So it's like you say, getting those tools in your toolkit and experiencing as much as you can, and that's all you can do.
Every actor's fear when the director comes up to you and isn't happy, but they can't vocalize why they're not happy, and they're just like, oh, just do it again. Yeah. And you're just like, please just say any one word. I can work it out.
The famous bad thing to say is like, oh, could you just say this line a bit quicker? Or could you just say it a bit louder? It's like, okay, okay, I'll give it a go. There's, this is, to be fair, directing is hard.
Yeah.
And there's ways to work with an actor. And you can always see the amazing directors who really invest and know the right thing to say to get out of an actor what they want. But it's like, say, sometimes you might not have that privilege, and it's about bringing yourself and delivering as much as you can, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Just, well, this is what I've got on the day, and this is the sum total of my learning, and this is what I can present now. So
Yeah.
have it. Well, go on then. We got a bit of time, if it's all right. So there was a fourth film, and I'm interested to talk about this one with you as well. So The Whale.
Yes,
With
The Whale.
Aronofsky, yeah, and Brendan Fraser. So, and Hong Chan, she was
Yes.
oh my god, she's so good. Sorry, yeah, she's incredible. She was in the Menu as well, and I had to go and seek her out because I was like, who is that? Like, incredible.
I love doing that. If you walk away from a film and you don't recognize an actor or actress, or
Yes.
and you're like, oh my god, you go and you have to go on IMDb and like, who is this person? Why have I not seen them before? I think that is cool if you can do that, But yeah, The Whale, obviously, spoilers if you didn't watch the Oscars, but Brendan Fraser won an Oscar, which I was thrilled. When I originally saw the nominations, I was like scrolling down, I was like, please, he has to be nominated. I think that if any was a comeback, that was a comeback.
Yes, it was
magical.
Mickey Rourke almost got it with an Aronofsky film, but not quite.
Absolutely. But no, it's a beautiful story. It was interesting because we were saying about the visuals of it and some of the moments in it as well. And yeah, what's your view on this, on The Whale?
I like the fact you chose it, and the reason that I wanted to bring it in as well, because as much as the ending of The Notebook and the father linked together with what they're dealing with, and then the father and the whale are both dealing with someone shutting into one place, and how that it's just basically, and he's not only just shut into one place, everyone's sort of shut into their body, but because of his issues, he is very much stuck inside this huge body, and just how his mind is still trying to remain to be free, and his mind is passionate and trying to reconnect with his daughter and stuff. I got to see it at the BFI on its premiere, and Brendan Fraser and Darren Aronofsky were in. And I think Samantha Morton was there as well. Were actually in attendance, and it was a really interesting film to watch. Very Aronofsky, very almost like you could see parts of Requiem for a Dream and how he makes the room seem very oppressive, and the use of the color palette and stuff. I think it was as much about Brendan Fraser's comeback, a bit like The Wrestler was as much about Mickey Rourke's comeback as well. He's very good at choosing the right actor to play the right character, so you almost get that liminal bit in between. Are we cheering on the character now, or are we cheering on Brenda Fraser? But there was, again, I always think, I know how hard films are to make. I know how hard it is to act. I know how hard it is to edit and everything as well, and the musical score. So it was amazing in parts, but in other parts I found it challenging. But then that's art. I don't think you have to agree with everything. Like I say, I took more from it than I felt it. It wasn't a waste of time. I really enjoyed parts of it. It's very, yeah. So I mean, what did you think though?
Yeah, one of the bits that really melted my heart actually was when he's teaching and the fact that he has his camera off and he's hiding himself away, but like the way he's speaking and the way he's teaching is so like nothing's wrong, and it's kind of, it starts the film with obviously seeing everyone on the screen, like all the pupils, and then it zooms into the screen where you can't see him, and it's like to be that kind of low in himself, to have to shut not only himself off from everyone else and be in his flat, and he doesn't stay out of that apartment, and the whole film is in that apartment.
Yes,
everything stays there, but also he's shut off even his camera to his pupils, to his daughter. I think that is the ultimate like shut off, isn't it? And the way it ends, I think, is beautiful. Like the story, the way they told the story was great. I'm not sure about the visuals. I thought the ending, perhaps it didn't need to be so on the nose with like seeing, you know, the white light and everything. I like the way that he was struggling to get off the sofa, and then you see that moment where, you know, you look up. But I don't know about the visuals. For me, it shouldn't be really about that. I didn't think we needed that much VFX. It kind of could have stopped perhaps and then just finished in that moment. But Brendan Fraser is amazing in it. And like you say, maybe this was more about him and his story with it. And yeah, did you see his Oscar speech as well?
Yeah, wow, like completely blown away and stuff. So I was in tears anyway after the guy from Everything Everywhere All at Once and Harrison Ford presented it to him.
What those speeches, man, the passion, when anyone speaks with that much passion and you can see like their hand shaking and how much it means to them, you just buy into it. You're just like, you know what, you deserve every bit of that. Like, have your moment.
I think for me as well, and you see it with Brendan Fraser as well, what he's had to struggle through in his real life. At the end of the day, when I saw him speak at the BFI, he's just a fan. He's so passionate. He still loves his work, and he found the thing that calls to him as a creative. And I think in a way, that's why I love doing this show as well, because I love hearing about people and knowing that passion exists. And it's so important because you don't ever want to do something or that you become jaded by. I think it's so important to, you know, even if the work you're doing is challenging and a tough character, if you still have that joy in your heart that when you're doing it, you're enjoying it, you know, creating and stuff. And I think that's what spoke to me about him, that he's gone through some hard times, but he still has his love affair with being a character and making film, and I think that's wonderful.
I think one actress actually that does this really well, Vanessa Kirby, she always manages to pick films that you can tell she's really passionate about. Anytime she speaks about things she's been in or stories that she's done, and she's done obviously theatre as well, I think she's a really good example of like always doing something that you really fully 100% commit to and are passionate about. Because it must be, I suppose, quite easy, especially if you're like big actors and actresses, you know, you've got the credits, blah, blah, blah. It'd be easy to kind of have that work there and go along with it because you feel like perhaps you should. But I always admire the actors and actresses who pick work, that only pick work and say no to things when they don't right. Because I think that in itself is also a skill. Like, how do you necessarily know something's right for you until you really dive into it? I guess obviously they get the opportunity to read the script before, but it's quite a big risk as well to have to say no to something perhaps.
And you know as well as I do that sometimes that you can do something, the direction's great, everything's good, but just something happens in the edit and you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't what I expected. So it can be just very much like, if it speaks to you in the moment, then you've just got to sort of take it on faith as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess we talked about like very famous actors and stuff as well. And now and again, you hear interviews and it's like, oh, you can get to the highest level and still be like beset by insecurity and fear and you know, not any sense of what you're doing is right or good. So I think really you might get this as well for your personal training, where people go, once I hit that goal, then I'll be happy. When I get to here, then when I get the six pack, I'll be happy. And I think, well, you can be happy now. And I think, finding, you know, it's like you could win an Oscar. You could be standing on that with the Oscar and you could still feel completely empty inside when you go back to your hotel room. Or you can just say, okay, you're already affirmed in yourself. You're already true to yourself. You're already having the joy, creating the work, you know, being a good positive force in the world. And then you get the Oscar as almost as a side effect, you know, like I said.
It's right. It's the process, isn't it? It's the process. And actually that's the thing that you should enjoy, I think, about acting or creating art, is the creating it. You know, you don't create art to get an Oscar. You don't create a painting for it to be necessarily the world's best thing. It's the doing of it. You're expressing you're expressing yourself, you're expressing art. And that's what I think it should be. The story, keeping it back to that storytelling again with films. I think if you're interested in an actor or an actress to get the Oscar, that's a byproduct of your process, right? The main thing you should concentrate on and enjoy and have passion for is the thing that you do like daily. You know, you've got to find those moments, definitely.
I don't know if you feel like this as well, but in the moment when someone says action or the curtain goes back and I'm on stage, not that I've done that too much, that's scary. But I'm not thinking, oh, this is going to get me a round of applause, or this is going to get me an award, or this is going to do well on the festival circuit. for me, the loveliest moments, even it can be in an audition, it can even be just taking apart a script that, oh, okay, that resonates. I get that.
Yeah.
I am in that, you're in that moment of just like flow and momentless where you're being, I mean, do you get something similar to that or?
Yeah, completely. And coming as well from like some theatre work, you don't have time to even think about the end result. Like you say, not doing it for the applause or to be necessarily even recognized. And I think that's actually a hard thing as an actor, I think, to not let yourself run away with the thought of working to be recognized. For your skill or talent, no matter what that is, actually, not just in acting, but in other things. But keeping it to, like I say, to the process and keeping it to that moment when you are in stage, keep yourself in the present moment. Going back to our lovely films,
Yeah,
he's in with it in the future and the past. Is all you have is that moment when you're on stage, or the moment when you're with another actor and you're working with them in that moment. That's it. You don't have a chance to do anything else other than that in the moment, and that's special. That's magic.
and I completely agree. And the idea of affirmation as well, do you always seek it externally? That will never be enough because it never fills up the inside. It doesn't have to mean your inside affirmation. You have to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm amazing. I can just rock it every single time. But just having that sense of self, and I think maybe not for everyone, but in having recognition, just having that peace of mind that you feel like you're enough and you're good at your job and people aren't going to keep questioning you. But ultimately, even if you do win all the awards, you see this with people, you can win all the awards, you can have all the recognition, you can have all the money, you can have all the status that you want. But ultimately, if you've never asked that question of self, if you don't have that feeling in yourself, it's never going to be enough. And it's balancing that ambition with that want to create and having a healthy balance as opposed to a self-destructive balance where you're always trying to fill in a hole that can't be filled.
Yeah, and one of the things recently I've been thinking about I asked myself the question, is why do I want to be a creative? Why do I actually want to do it? Because like you do get carried away. Like we've all had moments, and sometimes you chase things, you see what everyone else is doing as well. You can get carried away and doing other things and building up, blah blah blah. But actually, I think you have to stop yourself sometimes, remind yourself like, okay, why did I move to London? Like, what is it that I like doing in the first place? Why did I start dancing in the first place? Why do I like going to class? Why do I make art? Like that's an important question we have to keep asking ourselves.
I did one a while ago where I wrote out a mission statement about why what lights me up, basically why I do what I do. And ultimately, when I really thought about it and took it back to its base level, it isn't to be famous. It's like you say, that moment of flow, that moment of creativity, that spark where you feel something almost bigger than you is carrying along and you're just collaborating with it. And it's like, without getting too woo-woo, I think that's ultimately what we sort of seek, just having those opportunities to do that.
And that feeling actually, I don't think really changes no matter the size of stage or size of production. Obviously, there always feels a bit more pressure, and it's bigger scale. And we all want that bigger scale, and we got to pay the bills. But like that moment of flow is still the same if you're in front of 20 people on a stage or thousands of people. It's still the same moment of flow that you're going through, and I think that's the reason that I do it anyway.
The money thing, I actually had a really good chat the other day about it, and what I sort of tried to liken it to was like you're meditating, and if you can meditate, you're going to feel really good and in the moment, and everything's set up for that. But a money issue is like someone poking you in the shoulder. And it's like, if you can just get someone to stop poking you, then and I know you can sort of meditate it away and go, that's just a physical thing. It's not who I am. It's not really there, but it helps.
It does. Obviously, like we said, that's not the reason we do it. But at the end of the day, you do have to make a living as well. It's that balance, isn't it? Especially right now when things are difficult and times are difficult. So
Exactly. Well, Holly, thank you so much. We did the hour. We got 4 films in as well, which I'm super happy. You did it. But I was going to say, just to round off, firstly, thank you for your time, and secondly, is there anywhere people you'd like them to follow you and find out more about you and stuff like that as well?
Of course. I love to connect with people, as you know. That's how we met, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly right.
Love chatting away. Yeah, my Instagram is @HollyPrentice with an extra E on the end. Or my website is www.hollyprentice.com. So feel free, let's connect.
I'll stick them in the show notes as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on one of the amazing amount of podcast services I've subscribed to now, just check the show notes, click on it, and you can find out all about Holly. Well, Holly, thank you so much for today. It's been absolutely amazing as always. And yeah, I would just like to say, have yourself an amazing day, and I'll see you again on soon, either on set or we can catch up and have another chat.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I always love speaking to you. It's a genuine pleasure.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much now.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.